this region, I think we're not going to have that influx of properties. And the other problem, which is more of a national thing, but is more really here, is that traditionally, in the greater Carlisle market, Cumberland County certainly, roughly 10 to 15% of the housing sales annually was new construction. It was new construction of some kind. And the new construction starts have really slowed almost to a halt, okay? And that's for a number of factors. Most notably, it's very difficult for developers and builders to acquire financing. Amazingly, my experience with the Federal Reserve is the Federal Reserves have been encouraging banks and pushing banks to lend money for a lot of different things, but certainly for housing. And on the same token, the regulators who regulate the banks have been saying, we really don't want you to lend money for land developments and for spec housing. Mm-hmm. You can lend it if you want, but we're going to probably, unless you come into our lending standards, be very, very critical and make you do write-downs. So, an example, say a local developer in Carlisle area wants to build a 60-lot subdivision, 60 individual lots. So he goes to a local bank here, pick a bank, Metro Bank, pick a bank, and Metro says, okay, and they have an appraisal done, and the appraiser comes back and says, you can sell, we think you can sell 12 lots per year, okay? Or in this case, a 5-year sellout, okay? Well, right at the get-go, the regulators, pretty much in the national standard, saying we don't think you should lend money if you can't get it back in 3 years on a residential development, okay? So there you would write the loan, and the regulator would see the loan and see that you're going to write it, it's going to take you 5 years instead of 3. They're going to make that lender take a write-down for reserves, which is like a loss. Yes. And so the lender says, the person at Metro Bank says, well, why would I lend the money if I got to take a write-down on it right away? It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And so you got the regulators on one hand being very restrictive what the lenders can do, and you have the policymakers saying, Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department saying, lend money to developments, okay? And that's a real problem. And I learned this the Federal Reserve meeting in Washington, D.C. in 2010, and it was part on housing. And the speaker was saying, this is 2010, that the housing stock in the United States of America, traditionally, take all the housing stock in the whole country, there's roughly a 400,000 annual loss of housing. I mean, someplace in the region here, you'll see a house burn tonight. A big fire. You'll hear wind. You'll hear tornadoes someplace. You'll hear flooding. Yeah. I mean, and you say, how can it be 400,000? But in time, whole year, you add up. I mean, there was 20,000 houses in Alabama that flooded last year. So you lose 400,000 units. And in 2010, we were coming off of 2008, 2009, and they're projecting 2010 at the time, have 450,000 housing starts is all each year, And in 2011, we did about 460,000 housing starts. So you can see, if that's the case, it doesn't really even duplicate the inventory of people that are in housing right now. You got to replace that 400,000. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you just moved to the area, okay? Yes. There had to be a housing start. I mean, how many kids graduated from college 3 months ago, and they're not all staying at home. I mean, they're going to graduate school someplace, or they're getting, most of them got jobs someplace, and so they're not all going to stay at home forever and ever. So that makes a shortage of housing, and we're, that's one factor. Plus, just lack of inventories of people putting their houses on the market because they don't have any place to move to, or they just don't, are afraid to move. But so we have an actual lack of inventory, which is bigger. That's why we're this pimp. The list that we will sell it.
So the bottom line, though, the worst of the recession, housing.
I feel certainly Carlisle and central Pennsylvania, we are in an uptick. And as I mentioned, when I look at uptick, I say, are volumes increasing in the region of house sales? Are the units increasing? And most importantly, have we solidified the market and our prices going up? Because that is, you know, that's been the two, what I call social and economic nuances to this recession we've gone through in real estate, certainly, is one is that we never saw house prices since the Second World War do anything but go up. And we did see house prices go down in most markets for a 4 or 5 year period. So, you know, that's to me is a big factor. If this number goes from 0.8, which is modest, to the end of the year, maybe a total of 1.5%, 2%, that's a great step forward in, you know, turning that around, turning, you know, they can all price, if prices are going up, that's much better than prices are going down for a value
Yeah.
that people want to buy. The second is, and I'm surprised that it's not talked, because maybe this is my socio, but we